You know, there's like a Wikipedia page for everything. Toilet paper orientation, an entire page. The toast sandwich, toast in between toast. And even the NBA franchise player, defined as an athlete who is both the best player on their team and one the team can build their franchise around. Well, Wikipedia, there may be 30 teams, but there are not 30 true franchise player. In this top 3, bottom 3 Friday, we're gonna go through the best and the worst actual franchise players in the NBA right now. Hey, it's Casey. Welcome to AM Hoops. It is a top 3, bottom 3 Friday, and we're doing franchise players in 2020 today. If you have a request for a top 3 and bottom 3, leave it down below in the comments. Hit subscribe, notification bells, and check out the AM Hoops podcast. First, let's look at these teams again. So who doesn't have a franchise player right now? I would say it is the Hornets, the Bulls, the Knicks, and the Thunder. Some of you will argue that Zach LaVine, RJ Barrett, and Chris Paul are franchise players, but they're not. The Knicks have no idea if Barrett is good enough to build around yet. The Thunder could move Chris Paul as soon as this offseason. That leaves us with some bad franchise players, as you can see. But who are the worst? Many of you will probably think some of these guys don't apply, but I'll explain why they do. And the third worst franchise player in the league in 2020 is Blake Griffin of the Pistons. Now, the Pistons made one of the stupidest trades in recent memory for Blake Griffin. They gave up players, including Tobias Harris and Avery Bradley, plus a first-round pick that ended up being Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. All that for an aging, injured, max contract Blake Griffin. Ever wonder how the Clippers rebuilt so quickly? Yeah, this trade had a lot to do with it. On paper, the Pistons wanted to pair him with Andre Drummond in the front court, make a big two that competed in the East. In reality, they made one playoff series, got swept, and Blake couldn't even play because of injury. Detroit blows up their grand plan after Blake suffered another season-ending injury this year. They trade Drummond for like nothing, with 2 more years and almost $80 million still owed to Blake Griffin. So why isn't Blake Griffin the worst franchise player in the NBA? Why is he only number 3 of the bottom 3? Well, it's because I actually do have a little bit of hope that he can be a really good player on the court and off the court as a leader for this young Pistons team. He sulked at first about being in Detroit, but now he's got a great attitude. In that one playoff year we talked about, Blake was an all-star again. If he can, I know it's a long shot, get healthy, I think Blake can actually be a decent mentor on and off the court to a really bad but young Pistons team. The second worst franchise player in the league is Nikola Vucevic of the Orlando Magic. Now this really is saying something because Vooch actually makes the playoffs and is healthy now. He's worse than Blake Griffin though as a franchise player because even as an all-star, his teams are mediocre as hell. Vucevic had his best year ever last season. It was good enough for one playoff win against the Raptors. My issue with Vooch is that even at his best, with decent talent around him, the Magic are going nowhere. Any team built around this guy is headed for a really boring basketball future. Blake Griffin may be injured, but Blake's ceiling is a lot higher than Vucevic, both in the box score and as a winner/leader. Vooch would work a lot better as maybe a number 3 on a playoff team. Instead, Orlando made him the highest paid player on their team with a $100 million contract. They just so happened to choose the second worst franchise player in the league. But the worst franchise player is Kevin Love of the Cavaliers. Love actually used to be a decent franchise type player in Minnesota and his early days as the third wheel in Cleveland. But ever since they gave him that 4-year, $120 million extension, things have been awful in every way. He has exposed himself as an awful guy to build around. On the court, no one's been worse, literally. With Kevin Love as their franchise guy, the Cavs have 48 combined wins the last 2 years. No one has less. His attitude is atrocious. He's flipped out on the bench, thrown tantrums on the court. This hissy fit was because Colin Sexton wouldn't pass the ball. What a mentor. Unlike Blake Griffin, I don't think Kevin Love can handle being a mentor to a bad young team. And yeah, they do think he is a franchise player. He's their best player and they are building around him like it or not. Love has said several times he wants to leave and be traded to a contender, but the Cavs aren't going to do it. The GM, Kobe Altman, said he would not trade Kevin Love, and he kept his word at the trade deadline. So, Kevin Love is the worst franchise player in the NBA, and the worst kind too. The kind that doesn't even want to be there. Okay, so that is the bottom three. Now let's get to the top three, the best franchise players. And I'm not talking about like, you know, franchise player for 5 years into the future or who you'd want to start a team with. I'm talking about who is the best guy, both talent and to build around, for 2020. And number three is Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Bucks. It is impossible to argue Giannis' skill. He is most people's MVP this year, a lot of people's defensive player of the year too, but until he proves it in the playoffs, I can't put him higher than number three. Last year, the Raptors formed a wall between Giannis and the bucket, and it worked. If he fails again this year in the postseason, fair or not, people are gonna ask if he can get it done. They did it to LeBron, they called him a choker. People said MJ wasn't a winner before he got through Detroit. Giannis, though, is all the way up at number three, ahead of some really good proven players, because he is the single most talented regular season player in the league. Now, how do you build around Giannis? Well, it ain't rocket science. He doesn't have any major weakness. Even his three-point shooting is improving. The Bucks have surrounded him with shooters, and they are gonna win 60 games in back-to-back seasons. He's the kind of player anyone would want to play with too, so it's not hard to get a veteran type like Kyle Korver to come to your team. Giannis is the third best franchise player in the NBA. Number two, Kawhi Leonard of the Clippers. Now this is Kawhi in a nutshell. I find it hard to not make the Clippers title favorites just because they have Kawhi on their team. He's one of just 3 guys ever to win Finals MVP on 2 different teams. Kawhi may not be the most vocal leader, he may not be the best regular season player because of load management, but the beast he becomes in the playoffs is unbelievable. First player ever with a Game 7 buzzer beater. The only other champions to lead their team in points other than Kawhi last year, Jordan, Hakeem, and Shaq since 1984. And of course, there's that face LeBron made when a 21-year-old Kawhi checked back into the 2014 finals. Literally, that face says it all about Kawhi's defense. But my favorite fact about Kawhi Leonard, he has the best win percentage of any player ever. Kawhi's teams have won 75.3% of his games. Magic Johnson is second, Larry Bird is third. Now, of course, that's a team stat, and Kawhi has benefited a lot from being on really great teams his entire career. But even when you think back to when he was a young player on the Spurs, it didn't take long for Kawhi, even with 3 other Hall of Fame players, to be the Spurs franchise player. He may never win a regular season MVP like Russ or Harden, but I would absolutely take Kawhi Leonard as my franchise player over those guys. But not over LeBron James of the Lakers, the best franchise player in the NBA, and I don't care that he's 35 years old. When you have a 27-year-old phenom in Anthony Davis on your team and you're still the best player, that's a huge statement. LeBron is the best franchise player in the league because of his effect on his teammates. The only reason AD is leading the Lakers in scoring this year is because LeBron designed it that way. LeBron, of course, is leading the league in assists, but that's only because that just so happens to be what his team needs out of him. LeBron is the only player ever top 10 in both assists and points all time, so making teammates better is not his entire resume here. The Bucks are a deeper team than LA, yes, and they play in a weaker conference, but the Giannis versus LeBron on-off numbers are insane. The Lakers are about 12 points better with LeBron on the court than off because of how much he does for them, scoring and as a playmaker. He does it all. LeBron's obviously a winner with 3 rings and 3 Finals MVPs, but he is also the best leader in the NBA. I know some of you will remember his earlier days and you'll scoff at him being a great leader, but he has evolved. But yes, it's true, he wasn't always great. Like the time he sent this passive-aggressive sub-tweet at Kevin Love telling him to fit in after Love said he wanted to fit out with his teammates. Now, though, he is a guy that recruits the best players to your team and can turn your team around from one of the worst in the NBA to the best in the West in one offseason. Like him or not, LeBron James is still the best franchise player in the league. If he's on your team, even at 35 years old, championships are the standard. Those are the top 3 and bottom 3 franchise players in the NBA. Comment below what you agree or disagree on and what top 3, bottom 3 topic you want to see in the future. And if you disagree with LeBron James being the best franchise player, don't worry, I think our argument here will be settled pretty soon at the Orlando Bubble playoffs. Support AM Hoops and click subscribe. Don't miss a daily NBA video.